Hello and welcome to your ninth Java tutorial. So today we're going to be talking about strings. And the reason I want to talk about strings is because a lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about, especially in the early on of the tutorial, actually applies to a lot of objects. So it's something you do need to be aware of. And also, strings are very important. And strings, as you can see, actually recorded this and the audio got screwed up. So I'm going to be checking that regularly. Okay, anyway, so strings are very important. They're definitely going to show up on the AP test. So if you're an AP student, you need to know what strings are. So I'm making this video primarily for the AP students so that they can, review this over and over, so that they know exactly how to work with strings and yeah, so they can get a 5 on the AP test. So let's go ahead and make our new project. So tutorial 09 strings. Alright, and I'm going to rush this a little bit because it is Christmas Eve and I do have to go to church and stuff. So I'm going to rush this because I have another tutorial to record and then I have to go get ready. So this is going to be a little bit rushed and I do apologize. So class main, and we're going to do a static void main string args. Alright. So first things first, let's talk about types. So we have two types of variables. We have primitive types, so let's int, give that a value right away. Boolean, you give true or false, whatever. And then an object types, you do with the new keyword, and then you do that name, right? Right, so let's talk about this. This is storing stuff into the CPU, right? And it's just that 6, so that value is that instance. But this, with this new keyword, you're creating an instance of that in the memory of the computer. So you're actually putting into the RAM of the computer a new object. So if you were to do, you were just to do this, object O1 is equal to O. This is actually different than making an object that just, that just copies it. This is not copying this object into this one. This is actually saying that this object, the reference in memory that this object is going to have is the same as the reference in memory that this object is going to have. So if you were to change something on O1, it's actually also going to change in O because it's the same new object that's in memory, but they're just different names of they're called pointers. So that's something you need to keep in mind. Java does subtract that. Different languages like C++, you actually can tell whether it's a pointer or not. But Java is all nice and lets us do that. But you do need to be aware of it. So yeah, so that's that. So that's an object. So what is a string? A string is an object, right? But you don't give it a value. Well, you can, but you give it a value just like that. Whatever. And so you have this value right here. So what is this? What this is you're actually not calling a new string. Well, you are. The first time you make, when the program compiles, it pretty much, well, it's hard to explain, but just understand that this and this are the same. They're actually pointing to the same string, to the same memory. So let's talk about that. So let's talk about comparing strings. So because that's a very important thing. Comparing strings. All right, and I'm going to do this \n. So this is called an escape character. And those are very important in strings. So say you were doing whatever, and then you want to do quotes right here and right here. Well, that's a problem. The way to solve that is to do an escape character, or not \n, just quotation marks. Stuff like that. So just to keep in mind, there are different escape characters, and they start with this \. If you wanted to put a \, in your string, you just do double \. So you can look those up. There's charts everywhere about what the different escape characters are. So this \n just gives us a new line. So as you can see, there's a blank line right here. What actually Println does is it just does this print method and adds a new line to the end of it. So that's what that does always. Actually, if you go into it, it just does print, whatever, or, well, that's a little weird, but, or Println, there we go. It calls print and a new line. So that's what that does. Okay, so now that we just looked into the actual code of Java, now let's talk about this. So we're going to make 3 strings with the same values. So you can make this, go ahead, you can make this your name. Just make sure that they're all exactly the same. Except for the last one. The last one, it is still going to have the same value. But we're going to make it with that new keyword. Okay, so now let's look at these. These have the same value. But as I said, when you just do these double quotes when you're assigning it, it's actually going to be the same thing in memory. So this name1 and name2 have the same value. And they're also pointing to the same exact place in memory. But when you call this new here, you're actually making a new string in the memory. So you're actually going to be using a different, this is actually a different pointer than these two. So let's look at that. So let's say we don't know how to compare strings and we think you can just do this. Alright, so you can. It returns true with name1 and name2. But now let's see what happens when we do name3. Name3. What happens? We get false. Well, that's weird. Name1's Jose and name3's Jose. Well, that's because when you're doing this double equal sign with objects, they're actually checking the instance of it. Is it the same instance of the object? So you see this Jose in double quotes, just right here, just without new. This is the same instance. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. That is the same instance. So this name1 is the same instance as name2, or is pointing to the same instance as name2. So that's why they're equal with the double equal operator. But name3 is a whole new instance, so name1 and name3 are actually separate instances with the same value. So keep that in mind. That is very important with working with any strings. If you were to go, actually, so just know that. So now let's talk about how do we check strings and objects. For that matter, if we're just looking at the same instance, what if we have like two vectors, two vector 2's in libgdx, and they're separate vector 2's, but we want to check if they're the same point? Well, you can't just do the double equal sign because they're not the same instance. So lucky for us, Java, the object type, the one that is everything technically extends object, all types do that. Now they all come with this equals method right here that you can override. So that is where you can check the value. So sysout. So now we're going to do it by value. So name, or actually we're going to make a new string. So let's have a string where it has a username, and it's going to be game dev club, and we have inputted username. So inputted name, and that is game dev club. Let's say the user, whatever, they didn't want to remember all the caps that they used. So when you want to compare strings or any objects in terms of their equality, you just have to do sysout, and let's just do inputted name dot equals, and then we give it the username. So now let's see what happens. We get this false. Okay, so we can guess why it's false, right? It's the same, but this is not the same as this. A capital G is not the same as the lowercase g. All letters are pretty much stored by, or are represented by a number, and those are chars, characters, and I'm going to talk about later on in this video, actually next, after we talk about equality. So, alright, so this is good with like passwords and stuff, but most usernames aren't case sensitive. So let's see, how are we going to do not case sensitive? Well, luckily for us, string has a separate equality check, a separate way to check equality with this equals ignore case. So just do username. So now we do that. Now we get true. Now we get that these are the same. What it probably does, and I'm just guessing, is it probably just makes all of these lowercase and all of these lowercase and just kind of checks them. Or whatever, it makes them all uppercase. It just makes them the same case throughout the whole string and then checks. So that's what it does. So this is how you do like usernames or emails, stuff like that, where case doesn't really matter. So, okay, so now we're going to look at the char type. So this is a whole new type, and this is actually, char type. This is actually a primitive type. So if we were to look at char, it's actually a purple keyword. So char A. So a char is a single character, and they're represented by these single quotes. You cannot give a char these double quotes, and it has to be a single character. You can't do that. And again, like you can't do the single quotes for a string, right? Because this is a char, but we're giving it a string. So that's how Java differentiates between chars and strings with the single quotes or the double quotes. Other languages don't do that, but this is Java, so we're talking about Java. So a char. So let's just list out this A right here. So as you can see, it's an A. So okay. So as I said before, each character is represented by a number. To get that number, you can just do a int, and let's just cast an int to this char. Alright, and let's print that out. A int. Okay? So we see that, and this is 97. Okay, so you know that a lowercase a is 97. So now let's do another one. Char A1. Now, say we have a number and we want to get the character from that number. Well, you can do that. That's simple. You just do that. You sys out A1. And as you can see, it's still that A. Now, say we wanted to make this a capital A. Now, just to prove that it's a different number, 65. So I'm just proving that it's a different number right there. So when you're checking the equality of strings and characters, it's actually checking this number right here. So it's going through all of these and it's like, is the number of this equal to the number of this? Yes, okay. Is the number of this equal to this? Yes, okay. And it's pretty much just doing that. Okay, so that's the char type. That's all you really need to know. So the reason I showed you guys what a char is because the one very important thing you need to know about strings is that strings are an array. All strings are an array of char types. So a string is just an array. So you can get the length of an array just by doing, you remember the length. Oops. It's just dot length. So string lengths. Alright, so let's just pick a string s1 equals hello. And just do sys out s1.length. Right, and it's a method, it's not just a variable, keep that in mind. It's just going to return the dot length. As you can see, all this stuff in string. It's just a char value, it's a char array. So just keep that in mind. So 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's 6 characters. And that includes all spaces and punctuation. So you see I added a space there, and now it's 7. Because the space is actually also a char. The value of a space, I actually don't know the exact number. A space is 32. Okay? So just keep that in mind. It includes all spaces and punctuation. Okay, so now let's look at substrings. Substrings. So a substring is a string within a string. So basically, what that means is you can get different parts of a string from just one string. So string s6 is equal to, let's just do, I am a cool guy. Or not s6, s2. The next one's going to be s6 because the way I coded this, I kind of did a method and I realized that we're going to need that method earlier on, so I just moved it. But I didn't change any of the variable names because that would be a hassle. So s3. So we're actually going to make a couple more strings. So we're going to do sub underscore s2. So it's a substring of s2. So first thing we're going to look at is when you just give it one number. Okay, so let's see what happens when you print out sub s2. We get a cool guy. So this is because this is starting at index 5, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Starting with index 5, including it, is going to go all the way to the end. Okay, so let's try another way of getting a substring. Because what if we want a part of a string, but we don't want the whole thing? So let's just say we want it to start and end. So s2.substring. So now we give it a beginning position and an ending position. So it's going to go to 7. Sub 2 s2. So it's going to go to 7. So 1, 2, 3, or 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's going to start with C. So it's like, okay, C is the first one in the substring. 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, so it goes to that space. So what it's going to do is, okay, we're going up to 11. We're actually not going to include 11. We're just going up to it. So it's going to be, this is not including the second one. So it's the one before that one. So then we sys out sub 2 underscore s2. Alright? We get cool without the space. Alright? So now we're going to talk about the next method, next string method, and this is the trim method. So the trim method is how you get rid of leading spaces and trailing spaces. So string s6. So let's say you have a form and you want to check, you know, a string in the form. But you don't want, you know, say the user accidentally like put in a space or something at the beginning and the end. So let's actually just sys out this s6. And let's see what that looks like. So it has a space here and a space here that we can highlight. So say we want to get rid of that. So, alright, so let's trim it. So S6, so one thing you need to understand about the trim is that it doesn't remove all spaces. It just removes the trailing and the leading and trailing spaces. So it doesn't actually, so as you can see, this space is gone and this space is obviously gone. But it doesn't remove any spaces within the string. And it also doesn't just do it for one space. You can have as many spaces as you want. See, this has space right here, and a bunch of space right here, but this one still removed all of it. Alright? So that's what trim does. And I'm showing you this because we're going to pretty much write a string algorithm in a second. So last thing we need to know before this algorithm, and then it's the second to last method that or the third to last method we're going to talk about, is the index of method. So sys out index of. Okay? So let's just do a string s3 equals hello, I am Jose. You can put your name if you want. So sys out s3 dot index of. So what this takes in is it actually takes in a character. It says an int, but again, characters and ints are the same. So let's do the index of this comma right here. So where is this comma in the array of characters? Oh, it's the fifth one. Let's check that. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, that is correct. So it's the fifth one. Okay? So now, what happens if there's multiple indexes of that? So let's look for the spaces. So sys out s3.index of, let's give it a space character. It gives us 6. It goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, okay, so it just returns the first space. But what if we want this last space? Well, it's pretty simple. We just do s3, I can type, s3.last index of the space, and then now we get 11. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So what index is it looks, starting from the left, it goes all the way until it finds it towards the right. What last index of is it starts at the right and then starts going to the left. So it does, left, right. So this is from right to left, and it finds the first space going from right to left, and that is at index 11. This one, well, sorry, you're kind of screwed. Okay, so that's that. So what happens if we give it a character that doesn't exist in that string? So there's no f here. It gives a -1. So that is very useful to have this -1. It will always give a -1 if it doesn't find that. And that's always useful because it you can check if a string contains a certain character or not. And if it, if you do index of, you give it that character, and if it is -1, then you know that it doesn't contain it. And then you can also give it a string. So s3.index of, you can give it a string. So let's look at Jose. So it gave us 12. So what's index 12? So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So it just returns the index of the first character of where it first found that. You can also do last index of it. And remember, this is case sensitive, so you're doing that. So yeah, so keep that in mind. So yeah, so this is pretty much what it does. And then now we can build our little algorithm. So let's say we want to make an algorithm that returns the first. Oh, that's not what I want. I want a private static method. So we're going to make this string. Say we want the first word of a string. And then it's going to return string. Or it's going to take in a string. Right, so let's just go ahead and make a string first word. And for now, let's just do that and return first word so that Eclipse doesn't give me that error. Okay, so first thing we want to do is we want to get rid of all trailing and leading zeros. So let's trim it. So string trim equals s.trim. Okay. So now we want the index of the first space. So trimmed dot index of, we want a space. Alright, so this is going to give us where the first space is in the string. Alright, and then we want to check whether or not, so then we declare this, then we want to check if the index, so if there is a space, so if it's -1 means that there's no space. Sorry. So if there's no space in the string, then that means that the first word of the string is just the string. So first word is just trimmed. Okay? And then else, if there is a space, the first word is the substring, so trimmed, substring starting at 0 and ending with the index of the first space, not including the space because the second number is not included in the substring. So let's test this out. Sys out first word of S3, and we get hello with a comma. We get rid of that comma, we can just get hello. And as you can see, there is no space at the end. You can, add a bunch of ways to get rid of this comma, check all the punctuation points, but we're not going to do that for now because that would take too much time. So now let's make this, let's just copy this because we only need to change it a little bit for the last word. So last word. And let's just rename this to last word. Okay, you can do that by Alt-Shift-R if you're on Eclipse. So last word one is going to be a little bit different. First of all, we don't want the first index of that, we want the last index. It's the last space, not the first space. So that's already one big difference. And we're just going to go from that index to the end, right? Just like how we did before with this 5 right here. But this is including this one, so that's going to be including the space. We don't want that, so we're just going to move that index up by 1 so that we don't have that space. So okay, so now let's sys out last word, S3, and let's see it in action right there. And just to show you guys what it's like right there. So we need that +1. So this is pretty much just an algorithm using our string methods. So just know AP Comp Sci, you need to learn about how to make algorithms and stuff like that. So it's just a little example of what these what algorithms pretty much look like. This very basic algorithm of finding the first and last word. Okay, now we're going to look at two more methods. So sys out. So we're going to look at the replace method. Replace. Okay, so we're going to make a string s4. Strings are cool. Alright, and then we're going to let's replace all the spaces with underscores. Say we are building a program, we don't want spaces in our, say we just don't want spaces in our string for some reason. We just replace them with underscores. Okay, and then sys out. So what it does is it replaces all occurrences of that character with this first character with the second character. So it finds all the spaces and takes it out and adds in this that underscore. So you can also do this with whole strings in there. So you can do, say let's replace uncool or cool with uncool, or whatever. So strings are, well, whatever. You can put uncool if you want. That's what I put in the example. The strings are uncool, and it does it for every time it sees that. Cool, 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 and it is case sensitive. So let me just show you that. So see, it put uncool and it put those underscores over and over, but it didn't do it for the uppercase. So just keep that in mind. So this replace method is pretty much how people, say you want an instant messaging program, but you don't want to include, swear words. So you could just have an array of swear words and you just replace all of the swear words. Okay, so that's that. So then sys out. So now we're going to talk about our last string method. So char at. So let's just make a string 5, a lamau. Alright, so char at pretty much returns a character at a given index. So char at 2. Okay? The char at 2 is y, so 0, 1, 2. Right? You make this 4, it'd be L. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? If you give it a number that's outside of the range, it returns an error. So 8, -1. So just know that. And then you can do, say you wanted to find the last letter of the string. So char at, s5.length -1. So length -1 is the index of the last element. Always in every array, no matter what, the length -1 is the last element. So char is the index of the last element. So char at, say you wanted to find the second to last, whatever. This should look familiar to the AP Comp Sci kids because this was on a test. Or not on the AP test, it was just on a quiz that we had in class. So just know that the AP test is going to ask things like that, like what does this do? Oh, this gives you the second to last character, or this gives you the last character. This one gives you the second to last. So just know that. And then you can get the first character by just doing s5.char at 0. This returns the first letter of the string, or you can just do s5.substring 0, 1. It does the same thing, but that's in case you don't have this char at method. So yeah, that's it. That's all you really have to know about strings. Everything else you can, look up on your own time. It's probably not going to show up on like the AP test or anything again. This tutorial was primarily for the AP kids. You probably won't see this much when making games or anything like that. But it is an important concept, especially looking at an intermediate. And this stuff right here is probably the most important things. The checking of equality. So yeah, thank you for watching. Have a nice day, and sorry this was a long video. It's probably 30 minutes. That's geez. Okay, but sorry about that. But you really need to know this. So yeah, so I'm going to quickly record the next one so I can get ready. So have a great day. Bye.